Rich, Nagura, take it away.
Rogue was one of the first things that kind of caught my eye, right? We wanted to see whether or not Gingy was going to break out that Hunter. And we talked a lot about maybe when we're on this higher key, you want to be on that comfort class. You know exactly what damage you can take and what capacities, what cooldowns you're going to have to use. But here we actually see the opposite from Kjell's Angels. They bring the Rogue, which we haven't seen as much of. It's going to offer them a lot of skips, a lot of big focused damage when they get on these later bosses. But once again, they're going to go for that pull. They're going to pop the heroism. And with these cats, we know that the damage is not getting around.
Yeah, so they did the same exact pull as they did before. Both of the teams, you can see them drop really low from the roar coming out of the bear here. We saw some interesting strategy coming out from both teams as well. Once they did the big pull, both of the DKs actually used the Sky Step potion, walked all the way through the trash to pull that bear, and some of the mobs actually got CC'd by the Demon Hunter Frankster there, and some other CC coming out of the trash pack beforehand, so the DK can run through and do the pull in the meantime, so they don't cast any abilities. That was pretty smart.
And as we can see, once again, Kjell's Angels gonna be kind of front-loading their trash just a little bit here. They go just slightly bigger than Method, then they instantly go into another trash pool. On the other hand, Method going to stealth past as much as they can, and this is where we actually saw Gingy last time. He activates that RP when we see that other trash pack being pulled by Method. Method starts working on that. Gingy's going to join the fray, then he's going to go over to those bears. He's going to pull them, get the Vanish on while the rest of the group gets in, but Gingy actually going to go down here, so this is a little bit of a misplay coming in from Method. Last time we saw them execute it flawlessly, and this shows just how stressful this situation really can be. All the trash, very scary.
Yeah, definitely very scary trash. This time around, Kjell's Angels did do the same pull again with pulling that bear. And as we say, the moon can walk through that huge sanguine pull there and actually almost went down. Like he dropped really, really low walking through that sanguine. You have to be careful. Oh, we see the Windwalker dying here, but I think it might just been because of the skip. Maybe he was too slow and didn't manage to get into the shroud, or something happened there, but they need to get him back up. So we see them also do this skip here where they trigger the event and then they walk through. They don't have the Rogue doing it, though. They're just all walking together, so they're losing a little bit of time here as the whole group just stands here doing nothing pretty much.
Yeah, so they lose time in that capacity, and then also they use the Shroud of Concealment there instead of actually, that's the one thing that they do gain, right? They use that big group Shroud of Concealment. They come over and they don't have to invest the Vanish. There are a lot of different ways that you could go about doing it. Sometimes we'll even see groups sacrifice a player. I like to call it fizzle banging, because a lot of times you'll see them do it with a Warlock and they'll just get up the Soul Stone and res themselves. But Method has already engaged that first boss. We got a taste of it a little bit earlier, but for anyone just tuning in or anyone who's as forgetful as me, let's run them through the mechanics.
First of all, I just want to mention here that Kjell's Angels did lose their Windwalker, but because he died so far back, he actually had to release and walk all the way back and die again. So he's in mass rest range. So they didn't only lose 2 deaths from this Windwalker, but they also lost a lot of time by waiting for him to release and walk all the way back.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad situation to be in, not gonna lie. And you can see they just engaged the boss now. Method already kind of has gotten the brunt of the entire fight. We saw last time Imba is going to be the one who stands out there, takes all of these kitten leaps. There's one of them right there. That can actually be quite a scary mechanic, but as a Holy Paladin, you have such a wide utility of things to actually deal with that physical damage. The other thing that we see is constant cleave damage going out onto these adds, and we see our tank just placed up against that wall, so the bear can't bully him around too much when that form does come out. It's going to be a knockback. Being up against the wall, going to protect you from getting knocked all the way across the map, messing up positioning, taking too much damage, and already the Druid is going to be under 40% health. Well played by Method. They've pretty much already seen this fight, and if you go about this the right way, this tends to be one of the easier fights inside the dungeon. It's going to ramp up considerably from here on out.
Definitely, especially if you have a healer like a Holy Paladin to deal with that leap, as it is one of the most scariest mechanics on this boss fight. But a Holy Paladin, as you said, has a lot of armor to deal with this and a very big HP pool to heal up that Grievous. This time around, they do not have a rest, though, because Gingy died on his Rogue earlier. So the last time around, they did lose one of the players on this boss fight. So let's hope they're not losing one again, because this time they don't actually have a battle rest to get him back up.
Yeah, last time they actually did lose their Demon Hunter. So the big thing to think about here is they're pretty much at the exact same place. They haven't really messed up at all. And honestly, Kjell's Angels looks about the same as well, too. They've had some faults. They go about the same pool, but ultimately this time they don't have the bug. So now from here on out, smooth sailing all the way through the Thicket. Method about to get down the first boss. And yeah, really the Holy Paladin, though, it becomes pretty clear as you watch more and more dungeons why it is such a top-tier healer. There we go. Finally got it out. The other class that would be really good there is the Druid as well. Druids can pre-bear form that, but Holy Paladin's just very diverse. They're able to get out big damage as well when they need to, and you can actually see Imba right now going to move into that group. And we have Explosive. This is another place where Holy Paladins are going to be able to shine. We don't talk about the affix that much, but every time that they are pulling these ads, they have a chance to be spawning those fell explosives, those green orbs that you'll see on your screen, and Paladins are incredibly good at shocking them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why we see so many Holy Paladins, even though Druid, as we said, is also a top-tier healer for Plus in general. But if one team has a Holy Paladin and the other team has a Druid, as you cannot switch your classes in between games, one team might just counter-pick explosive affix into the Druid team, because Holy Paladin is just so much better at dealing with those explosives compared to a Druid, on top of all the other utility that is coming out of a Holy Paladin, of course. So now we see them pull, they skipped the left pack here with the Repentance from the Holy Paladin coming out. Now they're pulling the flowers behind this house here with the 2 flower plus Dryad pack, so a pretty decent big pull coming out of them here.
A very, very good pull coming out of them indeed, and this is one of the ones where you really... I'm always excited to see which route the groups take. I feel like this still isn't one that's 100% solved. I think comp definitely does change what you want to do as well. But speaking of pulls, they want to pull these flowers right out of the ground and then smash them back on the ground and step on them violently. And they're doing a good job of doing just that. Big damage coming out from the Demon Hunter. It's really fun to press I-beam. I actually really wish I was playing my Demon Hunter right now. But this is one of those pulls where we really start to see, okay, this is how this group approaches this dungeon. And it was Kjell's Angels that early on front-loaded their trash pulls. So Method's going to have to probably take a little bit more of this trash here. They're probably going to skip a little bit less in the hallway. But we know because they do have Gingy Rogue, they'll have that Shroud of Concealment back up. So maybe they'll pull more of these flowers. But if the Dryads just mix things up quite a bit.
Yeah, especially because those flowers here, they do give a lot of percentage compared to some other trash. If you think about it, those flowers don't actually have that much HP compared to other trash, but because there are those keepers that heal them up, they give that much percentage. So because you skip those keepers, as we can see right now, they just skip past the keepers, pulling those 2 flowers with the Dryad pack, just making advantage of that percentage that those flowers give, just so much more than anything else. And they don't really have many difficult mechanics to deal with. You can see the blossoms here from the back coming in while the keepers didn't get pulled, so they skipped the keepers, just went with 4 flowers plus 1 Dryad.
And that's smart, right? They're kind of abusing the fact. The reason the percentage is so high is because the threat doesn't come from the mechanics of this particular mob, but how they interact with the other mobs as well, right? There is that threat of healing. That is what makes this such a dangerous mob. It's not going to be that dangerous damage-wise. They're not that hard to kill. So if you actually are able to get these flawless pulls, which takes a lot of practice that most people probably don't have in Twitch chat right now, press 1 if you're one of the best players in the world. But the thing is this actual pull is not easy to do, and the percentage that they have, look, they just spike up 57%. We talk about how Kjell's Angels, they're at a similar place right now. They actually have less, even though they front-loaded their pull. So very well played by Method. This is one of the most impressive things I think we've seen out of them, and now they're going to get those ooey gooeys all grouped up using that Gorfiend's Grasp. And these guys can be a little bit scary as well. They can get those massive amounts of damage out if they are able to channel, but because of this group composition, they should have a decent amount of tools to deal with it. One of the big ones is going to be the stun coming in from the Demon Hunter.
Yeah, definitely. One more thing to note as well is the movement from both of the Blood DKs coming out here. You can see now just pulling it backwards as they're about to die. Of course, we have Sanguine here, so if you don't move them apart, we can see the grip as well coming out. If you don't move them out as soon as one mob dies, then everyone else is just going to heal up. So perfect movement coming out of both of the Blood DKs. We see Kjell's Angels actually caught up quite a bit now. They only have 1 more death, so only 5 seconds behind on the timer. They have a little bit more enemy forces, of course, because they did this earlier pull that we mentioned. So they're a little bit ahead in enemy forces, but they're still a little bit behind in time, of course.
Wow, seeing the Warlock right there, you actually see that Soul Flame go off. So they go around Darkheart. I'm assuming the reason for this is maybe because of how they want to play with their heroism here. So they're going to run right on past Darkheart. They're going to start pulling all of this trash here, and Frag just able to get off so much damage with those Soul Flames. These are a few of those ads where Warlocks can get a lot of damage out there in particular. Now Gingy Rogue going to be pulling a few of those dragons, getting out those massive amounts amounts of combo points into that primary ad, but Darkheart has been pulled by Kjell's Angels. They're going to get this going right now, and this can be a pretty scary one for the tanks, Nagora.
Yeah, especially that grip coming out of the boss. Of course, there's also a frontal breath that the tank needs to make sure that he's not pulling the boss into the group, of course, with that breath. But now we see the grip coming out. It does a lot of damage to the tank. You can still do something, you not stand in place, but it's still just so much damage coming out. So you need to rotate your defensive cooldowns properly, and you need to make sure that you survive. Then you also see that stomp coming out, the earth-shaking stomp. As we can see right here, the group dropping really, really low. Of course, it's physical damage, so a Druid or someone can just go in a bear form and get less damage, but it still does a lot of damage, of course. And they use their Bloodlust as well here. Yeah,
that group-wide damage is quite insane. Now, pretty much even though Method scooted up just a little bit ahead, is going to be Darkheart. They just activate their Lust now after that first grip, so they're going to be getting out a lot of damage. They're relatively safe for now, and they managed to pull some of the ads all the way back to the boss. There are going to be continued ads up as well, and the Rogue is going to use that to generate combo points. You put out that AoE ability, you put out that Shuriken Storm, and then you are able to put all 5 of those combo points into a finishing move onto the boss. We talk about it quite a bit. It's going to be important to Karazhan as well. Keep that in your mind. We won't have to mention it again, but that is the reason that we are seeing Gingy really get an impressive amount of damage here, and that's the reason that we see those little dragons coming out from the egg. They're not too scary as well because they only get triggered when you pop them out of the egg. They're not meant to be particularly scary, and they don't interact with affixes, which is a thing to note as well for the most part. So they're using that just strictly to generate combo points. Now, Kjell's Angels is still a little bit ahead on the boss, but Method right now has it pretty much evened up trash, and they only have 1 death.
Yeah, Method doing a very, very good job with this pull here. I've actually never seen a pull like that before, but it's very smart, as you said, with the Rogue coming in, and of course Fragrance on the Warlock. It's doing so much single target damage by gaining that multi-dotting and that Shuriken Storm, as you said. Kjell's Angels is on 25% on Darkheart here. They're about to kill it. We can see the Moonkin actually outranging the Stomp. The big AoE Stomp that we mentioned earlier, you can actually outrange it. So if you don't run defensive legendaries, or you don't want to go bear form, as it is of course 2 globals that you lose, so you lose a little bit of damage if you go to into that bear form. So we see him just outranging it and spawning the roots outside, and then he's safe.
So you talk about Frag being able to do a lot of damage there. Just to note, because I don't get to talk about this very often, but if you looked at his cast bar at all there, you would have noticed how many unstable afflictions he's been able to cast. Absolutely insane. So the way that he's actually able to get out all of that damage is he gets to dot up those ads, which is going to increase his soul shard generation, which really does allow him to pump. That does not happen every day for a Warlock when you are on Darkheart if you don't have that avenue to generate soul shards. So very well played by Frag there. This is what we expect out of Method. Damage-wise, they are min-maxing in a way that we haven't seen a lot of groups do, and I expect to see that when we actually do get to Karazhan, a more traditional boss where you get that effective padding. Like, you are still padding, right? But the thing is you actually get effective single target damage as well. So well played by Method there, but Kjell's Angels looking like a really, really strong team. At this point, it is neck and neck to a large degree. The question is who makes a mistake first for the most part. We know that it's going to be scary on Karazhan, and we know just how god darn scary it can be on Xavius. It can be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, so we see Method actually doing an interesting pull here. So there's one elemental that is a patrol walking left to right. Usually gets skipped by most teams, at least on live servers, because it does patrol around and you can just see it on the left and then walk past it as you get enough trash percentage later on. But maybe they have a plan on just killing this mob to get the percentage and skip a lot more later on. As we said, the same thing about Kjell's Angels doing this trash pull earlier. So maybe both of the teams just have this plan where they pretty much skip most of the trash after Karazhan and just go straight to the last boss.
We've seen some really interesting pulls in this Darkheart Thicket overall. It's just something to note. I'm going to be excited to go back and watch this VOD as well, because just figuring out exactly where they are trying to determine getting their percentage and things like that. But Karazhan has been engaged instantly. A few of those dragons going to be ripped out of the eggs, and look at what Gingy Rogue is able to do here. This is also going to be good for the Demon Hunter. We already talked about how it can be good for the Warlock because you can multi-dot, have increased shard generation. The reason it's going to be good for the Demon Hunter is you are just guaranteed, if you're running Demonic, you're running the Mean Beam helmet as well, you're just guaranteed staying inside of your stronger metamorphosis form throughout the entirety of the fight, because you're going to reset the cooldown on your I-Beam. Then that current tier bonus is going to activate, giving you the haste buff. So you get that, you get to double dip. You basically get everything, and you're going to see it actually is going to be the Demon Hunter on top of damage, and he's not just spamming I-Beam, and he's going to also be able to put those stuns out. You put the stuns out, run it. If you run Feast as well, you get to run around, pick those up, so you just get to stay in, just constantly annihilate over and over and over and over again. And that's why my main is currently my Demon Hunter Succubus and not my Warlock, because that's fun to do.
Yeah, the damage meter is definitely a little bit misleading here. As we can see, the Moonkin doing the most damage for Kjell's Angels, but a Moonkin doesn't actually gain single target damage from AoEing. So in his rotation there is Starfall, so he does do a lot of damage on the damage meter, as we can see, but it's not actually single target damage. So Method definitely has the upper hand here on boss damage, because they do have this Rogue, as you talked about, they do have the Demon Hunter, and also the Warlock, who all gain single target damage, while a Windwalker Monk and the Moonkin don't really gain single target damage. It looks like they're doing a lot of damage, but it's just really padding useless damage on those ads that really doesn't do that much.
And look, you can see it just on the health bar of Karazhan. That monk on that left-hand side of your screen on the team of Kjell's Angels is really probably doing more effective DPS than the Moonkin, even though the Moonkin is shooting up so high. Unless just some crazy stuff has happened, and I can't even think of a scenario that would make a Moonkin be able to go that crazy in an effective way. That Starfall's doing pretty much nothing. It looks pretty cool. It looks really nice. It looks really, really nice, but there's a reason that Method Karazhan is melting way quicker. They are chunking this boss down, and this can be one of the real opportunities that they get the lead, because this is where their comp probably shines the most. They tried to scheme a scenario where they could shine on Darkheart as well. That was why they went ahead. They pulled that trash back. Very smart by them. Good min-maxing, but they're not going to be able to get those advantages on Xavius. They need to make sure that they do this next trash pool, right? Karazhan close to falling for Kjell's Angels, and they do have a 9% lead in the trash department with a 5-second deficit from deaths.
Yeah, this is actually a really, really close game between those two. As you mentioned, they have 9% more trash percentage, so they can skip a little bit more trash later on than Method. Method is actually doing a decently big pull here, where they pull the bats. They actually didn't jump down, as most teams on live servers do. You jump down after Karazhan, but they actually just walked over to the other side, pulled those bats, and pulled a little bit more trash together. They're gonna AoE everything down. And just one more thing to mention here in Karazhan, both of the healers did a really good job, because it is Tyrannical 24, and Karazhan actually does a lot of AoE damage, so good job on both of the Holy Paladins keeping their groups alive, of course.
You know, I thought I could trust you. I thought we were just two DPSers getting to hang out, talk about damage the whole time. You had to bring up healing.
I do heal sometimes.
No, stop,
I'm a girl after all.
Stop. You know, it's only your hunter and your moonkin. We're not talking about Resto Druid. Not at all. Haven't you been? Never mind. We're not going to talk about healing. Let's look at Kjell's Angels. They're doing damage.
Yeah, Kjell's Angel is doing a pretty standard pull. They pulled the patrol with the next pack together, as far as I'm aware. Of course, the solar beam from the Moonkin coming in here, very, very big, as it interrupts everything. Oh, they actually also pulled the bat. So they did a pretty big pull as well. And they're only missing, I think, after they kill these mobs, they're 100%. Yeah, so they have 100% trash percentage here. They can just go straight through to the boss. And Method's still fighting this trash pack. They still need 9% at this point. So they're actually quite a bit behind now, because...
Yeah. I think both groups should have Shroud as well. Yeah, there's the Shroud coming out on the side of Kjell's Angels. Once Method is able to get this trash down, they should have Shroud as well. They have a 5-second advantage because of deaths, but once we get past all of this trash, Sap coming out for safety on the side of Kjell's Angels, this is really just going to be a race on to Xavius. Who is going to have the most damage? It is pretty much neck and neck. They should all engage at the same time. We're waiting to see that Shroud come out here, making sure that pots don't come out. There's the Shroud. All right, so they're going to be able to run by now. So we're pretty much neck and neck. This 5 seconds, you can say that Kjell's Angels maybe has a little bit of a head start here. Main things to look out for are people wearing Prydos, and will you be able to get past that intermission? Enemies of cheat death instantly going to be proc. That could actually be a big negative on the side of Kjell's Angels.
Yeah, the Xavius here, last boss, and Tyrannical, a very, very difficult fight to deal with, as both the teams don't really have Bloodlust either.
Oh, that cheat death was actually procced.
Yeah, the cheat death was already procced before, so it's back up now, thankfully. He's got his cheat death ready. But yeah, probably using defensive legendaries, most of the players here. You can see Fragilok standing all the way in the back, because he can actually outrange some of those abilities, like the Nightmare bolt that gets casted on one random player. It can also be the tank, but it does a huge amount of instant damage, so it just can one-shot you if you don't have any defensives or if you don't dodge it, as I said. If you go out of range immediately, as soon as the boss casts on you, you have a very, very short reaction time to walk out of the range, and then it will actually be interrupted. But there's one other ability that also does so much damage, and it's Feed on the Weak that casts on a random player as well. As we can see it here on Kjell's Angels, on the Rogue, on Ashen, he just drops solo for every tick. It's almost it's more than half of his HP pool that gets removed every second. It's just so much defensives that you need for that. And then on 50%, once he drops to 50, he does a huge AoE chunk, as we can see everyone dropping low.
And you can see for a second there, Frag actually wasn't able to heal just using Drain Soul, and that was when Frag just started to get chunked very hard, yo-yoing for a second. Now everything's good. He is able to get those heals out. The main thing is, though, is we're about to hit 50%. It's going to be Kjell's Angels who hit it first, and the Druid already low. He tries to go into bear form, tries to hit that frenzied regen button, but it's just not going to be enough. Then the intermission goes out. Battle res, they wait on it for just a little bit. They should be able to stabilize here. That is going to be the job of the healer, but that little bit of damage that you end up missing from that Moonkin could be enough to slow them down. Keep in mind that death also going to be -5 seconds. They pop their heroism right in the nick of time. Heroism going to be up for a second here for Method, but we got a real race on our hands. There's only going to be about 8% in between. How will Method handle this intermission? They do it without even breaking a sweat. Instantly, they go into Lust. Now they're doing as much damage as they possibly can. If they stay up through this could be their opportunity to catch up, but it is Kjell's Angels out in the lead.
It's 15% difference between those two. Kjell's Angels on 26% boss HP, so they're quite far ahead in boss percentage, but they're actually 10 seconds behind in deaths because they have those 2 more deaths. So once the boss dies for Kjell's Angels, Method actually has 10 whole seconds to finish up the boss, and they would actually win over them.
And you can see that they're speeding up right now, too. A little bit of ramp-up time happens for everyone. They're inside of that heroism. It's still about 15%. They're picking things up. That 10% deficit needs to be the only thing on your mind as we see the boss going lower and lower. The mechanics are, for the most part, under control. These teams look like they're going to be able to handle it. This is a DPS race here in its purest form, and we know that Kjell's Angels should be able to come out on top as long as no major problems happen here. It's all going to come down to those 10 seconds. Will Method basically be able to do 10% damage to Xavius in 10 seconds? Xavius falls here for Kjell's Angels. Now it is all in Method's hands. They got 10 seconds to do it. They got 7 seconds to do it at this point, and it doesn't look like Method's going to be able to do it. Kjell's Angels is going to get that upset started nice and early in Darkheart Thicket, the first dungeon of our series.
In the end, and that whole run for both teams, really pretty clean all the way up to the end. I was sitting there waiting for Xavius. Intermission comes down. 1 Druid lost on the side of Kjell's Angels, and that was it. That was the only death on a 24 level Darkheart Thicket, and that was essentially as clean as I think it was ever going to be.
I mean, there was no...
This to stay alive. If they do not, Kjell's Angels will be going for the rematch against Team PogChamp in the winners finals, and then, of course, will be going to the Global LAN finals later on.
Let's hop in a boat.
Oh yes, the romantic boat ride.
It's Rob, get off the desk.
I'm going to stay on the desk.
All right, then hop in a boat. Let's do it. All right, now we get a look at these lineups for these teams. Once again, we are going to see these 2 rogues. Keep in mind that even though this is the first time that they decided to break out the rogue on the side of Kjell's Angels, they made the decision to lock it in the entire time. And we didn't see any problems with the rogue in that first dungeon. Looked very well rehearsed. The damage was good coming out, but this is going to be a dungeon where there's slightly less perks to actually having the rogue, Nagora.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. I mean, I'm just very impressed by Kjell's Angels overall, because they switched their comp actually a lot. As I said, they played 3 Windwalkers, they played 2 Windwalkers, Moonkin, and now they switched it to the rogue. So they definitely can play their classes. They're very versatile when it comes to their comp. Just one thing to mention, though, that Method actually played Court of Stars already in an earlier series. Of course, they played it on a lower level and not on 24, but they have this special strat where they can skip one of the enforcers. So it will be interesting to see if Kjell's Angels actually adapted to this strat and is actually doing the same pull as well as Method, as it is allowed now on the tournament rules, or if they choose to do something different here.
I'm going to be honest. If anyone doesn't do that pull, we're going to assume that they do not do it because they have decided that it doesn't work for them, because it was a little bit of a situation, right? One team thought that they weren't allowed to do it, and now it has been clearly stated, A, that it exists because we had to actually deal with that situation, and also it's been seen, right? So I'm going to fully assume that the teams have probably done it at this point. We'll have to see, though, if it is a route that Kjell's Angels decides to take. They're going to get this big pull going in the corner here, and this is a good pull for them as well, pulling pretty much all the way to that first boss, and you can see those Volcanic just coming down there, just moving right along with these ads, getting big damage out here. Method in a similar position now, trying to get over to that patrol captain, and Kjell's Angels going to pull that boss before they even do get this trash down.
Wow, this is actually a crazy pull coming out of Kjell's Angels here. I'm pretty impressed. They pulled all the mana worms in the back, they pulled all the trash, they shrouded through, pulled all the trash all the way over to the boss, using their Bloodlust here. Insane amount of mobs, especially on teaming here coming out. We see all the Volcanics and all the mechanics at the same time. There's also a construct, so they need to make sure that they interrupt everything, but those as they just died so fast, they're already dead. This is a 24 dungeon, and they're just doing so well.
Cheat Death gonna go off there, not positioned perfectly, but this is beautiful from Kjell's Angels. If you have a Moonkin, you gotta use it. This is one of the scenarios that a Moonkin's really gonna shine in. They are playing to their composition very well. That pull probably would not have worked for Method, so I like the fact that they're not doing it. You have to play your own game to a degree, but now Method, they're at a similar trash percentage. They just pulled the boss now. They are slightly behind. Keep in mind, though, as Nagora mentioned before we even went on that romantic boat ride, at that 25% mark, the patrol captain's gonna go for a little nightcap, and he's gonna go to sleep.
Yeah, we can also see the construct still alive here, as the construct has this one ability, one cast, that if it does not get interrupted, it actually heals all the friendly mobs around it. So they did a really good job on this very big pull to control it properly. They had all the CC lined up, all the interrupts properly lined up. Of course, on top of all the boss mechanics that we can see here, this beam coming out that you need to dodge, and we also see this other cone pretty much on two sides coming out that you need to dodge. And of course, there's also the binding that pretty much roots every single player in place. That has 3 stacks. You can either jump 3 times to get rid of it, or of course there's other abilities. You can dispel it as a healer, or you can give freedom. Holy Paladin, really good to deal with it. Of course, priest could mass spell, but we haven't seen any priest in Europe. What a surprise.
Yeah, Jack, deal with it. But I know as a Moonkin player right now, I'm beaming from ear to ear getting to see a Moonkin actually pull off a strategy like that. We talked about why we don't see as many crit chickens, and a big reason is going to be the fact that they need ramp up time. They need to have pulls like that. Certain affixes it doesn't work. You have to lock them in for the entirety. And we have just seen Kjell's Angels be a team that they are built around their Moonkin to a large degree. The Moonkin does have that Windwalker, but for the most part, been staying on that Moonkin and looking really good, knowing how to use the class, having absolute mastery. But Method has been able to catch up to a large degree. It looks like Gerdo's going to go for that drink right now, and Daddy's going to go to sleep at just about the same time for both groups. And the way that Method was actually able to pull, they're not that far behind in the trash department. It's going to end up being, as we actually do see this last guard go down, I believe it's something in the area of, they'll probably go up to 33%. I think that's a 2% pack. I don't know. I haven't tanked in a little while, but Kjell's Angels is going to right now be a few percentage ahead. They have already hit that 38% mark.
You can see both of the Holy Paladins using that Sky Step potion, going through that room, because they're doing this skip where the Holy Paladin needs to go and trigger this event, because someone needs to walk through this door to trigger the event, as we can see the RP going on right now. So the door opens at the very start, where you start the whole dungeon. The door opens up, as you can see on Kjell's Angel side right now. They're pulling the sentry that Method killed earlier, and we also saw Method pull some of the trash into the first boss fight, so that's where they got this percentage back from. But Kjell's Angels actually 12% ahead in enemy forces, so Kjell's Angels is ahead at this point.
Yeah, you know, it ends up being even a little bit more than I thought it was when we do see that first boss go down. We're kind of seeing the dividends of it, and the question is, we know how Method likes to do this room, and they have a pretty good Enforcer spawn there, so they're going to be able to get to it instantly. You want to make sure that you are efficient, so they pull more ads there. They're going to be able to do that AoE damage right around the pillar, so they're going to be able to break line line of sight when that Enforcer does its Enforcer things, and they should be able to avoid taking quite a bit of that damage. And I was just checking right now. I thought for a second, I was like, was that cheat death, or did they just stand in the damage? They stood in the damage. That's actually a little bit better because they all do stay up. It would be pretty bad if that cheat death was procced. It is procced on the side of Kjell's Angels. But one of the nice things is instantly getting into that Enforcer, pulling those additional adds. They are going to be very economic with their trash pool here, but we know how they like to skip one of them. So we're going to have to see how well these Enforcers are placed around the map for them.
Yeah, we saw this risky strat coming out earlier as well in some previous matches where people played Court of Stars and did not actually choose to line of sight that Enforcer ability that is very easily avoidable. But as we said earlier, is that it also costs you damage, especially as a melee player. If you have to walk line of sight to not get hit by it, sometimes the teams just choose not to line of sight, and the healer just, as we can see, both Holy Paladins of course topping off the groups through that debuff just to gain a little bit more damage, because every single second of course counts.
Certain classes it makes sense to stand in it, others it doesn't. So I don't feel like it needs to be this all-in strategy where every single damage dealer does stay in. Like, hey, look, a Warlock can stay in most of the time, right? You just hit one if that's where your Drain Soul is bind, because it should be on one, because you're going to be pressing it a lot. But the main thing is another smart thing that happens from Method is Amakutchi comes out. Amakutchi doesn't have too many mechanics, so they make sure that they're pulling that with things that do have mechanics. Put the easy trash with the hard trash, and we're going to see Kjell's Angels trying to do the same thing here as they pull Amakutchi in, but it's not with an Enforcer as of right now. Kjell's Angels still further ahead in that percentage department, and now we also need to be keeping track. There's a very big checklist here in Court of Stars. How many Enforcers does each team have? That's going to be even more important than that trash percentage for now until we bypass this phase. Another thing that we do have to note, Holy Paladins can't see ahead, right? So at this point, it is going to be a slight advantage in the favor of Method, because they're going to have that spectral sight on their Demon Hunter. So they're actually going to be able to figure out that mystery just a little bit quicker.
Yeah, definitely an advantage to have this demon side from Frankster here. He's going to be able to see the spy once he talked to all 5 of the clues. Once he got all 5 clues, then he's going to see the spy. And one thing I just noticed here is that Method actually does not have a battle rest, even though the only deaths that both of the teams had were those 2 paladins that actually, at least as far as I'm aware, both of the paladins did die to trigger the event to open the door. But Kjell's Angels does have the rest, of course. Maybe Imba actually had a soulstone and accidentally used it instead of releasing. I'm not completely sure, but we see Imba going down here on this big pool, which is really bad, because all of the whole group just got hit by that Enforcer cast, and the healer is not actually here to heal him up.
Yeah, see, that's one of those times. That's why I was saying you shouldn't be completely on like concrete on that. It shouldn't be, and we're probably going to see. It looks like Gingy's managing to stay up, which is pretty incredible, and staying in the fight as well. So Imba makes it back just in the nick of time, and that's the reason that Gingy can commit there. But that's why you have to be a little bit fluid. Be like water when it comes to the Enforcers. Sometimes you can stand in and you can try to go for that big damage, but sometimes just come on, get around the wall. Don't take that damage, especially when your healer is down. But ultimately, Method going to be rewarded a little bit for that risk. They get it down that much quicker. Imba gets back just in the nick of time. Kjell's Angels going to be at the 70% mark when Method has somehow managed to pull ahead. Their aggressive play starting to work for them. Of course, they do have that 5-second deficit, but it's looking like they're ahead in this one. We'll have to see. This has been back and forth. Is Kjell's Angels going to be able to catch back up?
Yeah, I still believe they're pretty close. Of course, the trash percentage is pretty even out now. They're both on the second minibus. The health percentage on the minibus looks pretty much the same. I do believe that both of those teams are going to do this new trick that we've seen before, where they just pull the bus and reset the bus itself, but the minibus stays there, so they can pretty much skip this last Enforcer and they can just kill the minibus, as the last minibus doesn't really do anything except a frontal shockwave. That's all you have to dodge. Everything. He doesn't have any other mechanics. Of course, minibuses tend to have a lot of HP, so it's very efficient to kill that boss with just more trash. The last few percent that they're missing, both teams missing exactly 25% trash here.
They look scary, but they're actually not. They take a long time to kill. They're just not efficient at the end of the day. So yeah, it is important to kind of multitask, drag them over to something that does matter, you know. And the other thing to note, I brought this up yesterday. It's crazy that Court of Stars has kind of been this sanctum for innovation in the MDI. The first MDI, we started to see pools that we had never seen before. They come meta. We don't even do them anymore. Now, all of a sudden, we start seeing this pool come out and be meta. So even this late in Legion, we start to see teams adapting. A huge yo-yo of damage going to go down. Purgatory going to be procced on the side of Kjell's Angels as they get another big pull. Once again, trying to utilize that Moonkin, but it's going to be the Rogue that just shoots up on the meter, and then right after that, the Windwalker comes up as well. Big damage coming out from all of these classes, but it's not enough to keep you alive.
The Moonkin actually going down here for Kjell's Angels, and they chose to pull that Enforcer, the last one, and we see the Rogue dying as well. So they lost 2 people here, not dodging that Enforcer cast, as we mentioned, and the Windwalker solo going down as well. That was just a very risky pull. I'm not sure on the full group vibe coming out of Kjell's Angels here. They did pull this one Enforcer that they didn't really need to pull if they would have done this trick that Method showed earlier. But I'm not sure if it was intended, if they wanted to just do this big pull or not, but a full group vibe coming out of them here.
That's a little bit rough, and you could actually see it wasn't even the initial fell eruption that took them down, but the dot. Over time, you just see them slowly hemorrhaging damage, and then they do fall. But Method going to use this strategy that they have used very well so far in this tournament, and they kind of seem to be not necessarily the innovators of, but because I'm not sure who did come up with this, but they are the team that has been using it to dividends here.
Yeah, so we see them, as I said, resetting that boss, getting the mini boss, skipping that last Enforcer, and killing the Harbor. As usually a lot of strats on live servers, when you start the dungeon, you go down the stairs on the left side and you just pull the whole Harbor together and just sometimes even use your Bloodlust, just get a lot of pretty much free percentage, because of course at the start of the dungeon, everyone has their cooldown strategy, so people want to do big pulls from the get-go to get their cooldowns off CD. But both teams they actually skipped that Harbor and went straight to the boss, doing this other big pull and using their Bloodlust there. And now they're going back for the Harbor with that last mini boss here.
That's the thing. This new pull is just so good. And it's crazy that it took a little bit of time to figure out, but it is so good, and it really does seem like if you're not doing it, what are you doing? And ultimately, Method's going to do that here exactly at that 100% mark. Now, all they have to think about is going in, doing this boss. Then they're going to get to use their Spectral Sight on the Zoinks phase. Then they go to the Zoinks phase, they take down the mini-boss, and then they have one more boss left. So that's where Method is at. Let's see if they're able to pull off this boss flawlessly before Kjell's Angels is even able to get there. First thing that you need to think about with Flame Wreath is when these ads actually do come down, it needs to be a big effort from the group, and you can see them stacking up. They're going to spawn right there. Instant I-beam going to come out. The second that they start casting, expect to see a stun come out as well, and these ads are just going to be taken down.
You see, they lose one more player here at Kjell's Angels, as they did use their Bloodlust on a big trash pull here. They didn't actually save it for one of the boss fights, which might be a problem later on, because I don't think they're gonna need 10 minutes to clear the whole dungeon, as Court of Stars is not a very long dungeon at all. And we see Method here, of course, on the second boss on Flame Wreath, and the boss is dropping really fast. Of course, they have the Rogue and the Demon Hunter, which are so good for this fight, as all those imps set spawning and they gain this extra single target damage. Of course, you can also see the group dropping really low, because there's this AoE aura that constantly does damage, and the longer you're fighting this boss, the more damage you gain. There's a lot of things you need to interrupt as well, as there's a boss cast that needs to be interrupted, else everyone loses a little bit of their HP. It's a debuff that can be dispelled, and there's those imps as well that you need to coordinate your stance and your interrupts properly, and if you don't kill them in time or they get cast through, then it does a lot of extra damage to the group. That's
one of the really nice things about the Warlock, being able to pull out this pet right now. It's going to add quite a bit of utility to the group. This is one of the areas where you're like, I kind of feel like I wish I had the Monk here so I could get out a leg sweep and things like that, but Warlock is going to be able to maybe not be as efficient at utilizing those ads to create more damage, because it does take a little bit of ramp up time to actually fully get the soul shards to start working for you, and to kind of create a nice little soul shard factory, a nice little soul shard kingdom, if you will. But you're not able to set that up there, because you want those imps to be dying quick, because you want to try to be able to blanket stun them. But all in all, Method does a fantastic job there. This next mini boss isn't going to give them too much problems. Spectral Sight also going to put them very far ahead, because Kjell's Angels, those kids are going to have to solve the mystery.
Yeah, this is definitely Method's game to lose at this point. 9 deaths to 2 deaths, and they're really far ahead. They're already on that spy game. Of course, they coordinated properly which person goes where, because the spies are, the clues are directed in different locations. They're top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. So we saw all the players just spread out immediately, use their speed buffs, use their speed gear, and try to get those clues as fast as possible, so Frankster can use that spectral side. And they found the spy. Now we can see him go to the left side and turn into a mini-boss, into a demon.
They already found who done it. Like we said, Frankster going to be able to sniff out any demon, and now he just gets to say, reveal yourself, fiend, and gets to start doing that damage, bring them down. Keep in mind, Kjell's Angel still working on Flame Wreath. They're doing a pretty good job on Flame Wreath, but they already do have that 9 death deficit. We can see their Monk right now actually using Karma, going to have those big stuns on the Imp, keeping themselves up. But let's see what Mythic can do on the Demon as the camera dramatically pans down on his demonic lair and swoops in like a bat straight from the nether. And this mini-boss being meltified.
Okay, so this mini-boss does have quite a few difficult mechanics, especially on Fortified. Of course, it is tyrannical, so the mini-boss is not buffed, but this Shadow Bolt, as you can see, the debuff on the whole group on Method here, it does a big AoE chunk damage at the very start as it casts, and then it leaves behind a dot that actually does increase the damage of the next Shadow Bolt. So as it has a travel time too, if you would stand really far away and then go all the way in melee for the second Shadow Bolt, you would actually still have the debuff on you, and you would actually gain more damage from it. So you need to make sure that you don't move around too much or just stand in melee, as we can see Method doing here.
Now, as we can see, Kjell's Angels actually going about trying to find those clues and playing that mini game, solving the mystery, and that's going to be quite a few seconds on the clock for them, actually figuring out all of those things. It looks like they should find the culprit relatively soon here, with the mini-boss already being slain by Method. One more boss stands between them and tying up this series.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of RP going on here. You need to loot the key from that mini-boss, and then you need to open up the door. We can see Alexander talking here with Melandris, and then the boss is going to spawn later on. The boss does have quite difficult mechanics, and of course Method saved their Bloodlust, as there's the full screen VM coming in. They do have the Bloodlust for this boss, and we probably see one of the range, either Imba or Fraggy, baiting that charge outside. Of course, everyone else is going to stand in, and he uses that charge to place one of his illusions behind, and the illusions will actually cast the same abilities as the boss does. We can see Imba doing it here, the Holy Paladin, waiting outside, spawning that illusion outside. So when we see the Maelstrom coming in, the big AoE, then of course no one is going to stand close to that blue marker where they're going to bait, because there's a small AoE around those illusions and around the boss as well, not only the big AoE group damage coming in.
Yeah, and this is something that we've seen from the Holy Paladin so far. They go to actually try and stack. They'll sacrifice damage here, and it's definitely well worth it, because you just get so much real estate. You have so much more room as everyone on the team to hang out, actually take this boss down. Instantly, they got to press that lust. They're already out of it now, and you can see just how much damage they did at the beginning. But keep in mind, this boss gets scarier and scarier as the fight does go on, in a similar fashion to Flame Wreath. It's one of the patterns here, and already, before it's at its most dangerous point, the apex of doom, already many members of the squad getting chunked, but Imba being able to deal with it quite well, and having stacked up these baddies that come out from Melandris, they're going to have an easier time dealing with these mechanics.
Yeah, definitely. Probably save their cooldowns for later on, as those illusions, of course, mirror the abilities from the boss. So the more illusions there are up, the more damage this lasting Maelstrom is going to do, which is this big AoE. Of course, it caps at some point. I think it's only 5 or 6 illusions. So at that point, it's not going to do more damage anymore. But once you reach that cap, once you reach that maximum amount of damage,
the apex of doom,
it just does so much damage, and the healer needs to make sure he's all those cooldowns ready, and maybe even using defensives. As you can see, Imba here as well. Sometimes they use that Sephi Secret, that legendary, so the tank walks into one of those tornadoes right before the Slicing Maelstrom to get the Dispel on the Paladin, so he has the Sephi Secret up for the Slicing Maelstrom and get more healing out in the group.
One of the things, this Death from Above that we actually saw Gingy doing there, we've seen that this can be a particularly difficult ability to use on this fight, because it can place you in bad areas where you can actually take damage. So it's impressive to see Gingy using it so well, as we see the group getting chunked for just a second there. Imba not even scared at all, now healing himself up right in the fray of the baddies. But Gingy actually using that Death from Above masterfully. We've talked about the fact that Gingy is a main hunter. If you know Gingy, you probably think of him as a hunter. I know he's one of the guys that'll hit up very early in an expansion and be like, yo, what do hunters look like right now at the beginning of its tier as well? But he's looked lights out on this rogue, and gotta give it up for Imba. I hate talking about healing. This has been absolutely insane by Imba, just so well played. The perfect stack coming out here, and every time the group is taking that big beefy damage, Imba just doesn't even break a sweat.
Yeah, he's definitely doing a super good job here, keeping his group alive. As we can see, baiting him as well, baiting the illusions as well to the side. Usually ranged players do it because the healers already have such a hard time on this fight, keeping everyone alive and making sure they have everything ready ready for the Slicing Maelstrom as the group drops super low. But not only does he have to heal the group, he also needs to bait the illusions because, of course, the damage dealers just want to tunnel the boost and do nothing at all, as you can see him standing there.
Method now just 10% away from tying up our series. Keep in mind, this third dungeon is going to be the one that decides the second team, all of the teams, to go to that global land. Imba gets chunked, instantly shrugs it off once again. The MVP of this dungeon, lights out performance from this healer. 4% left on Melandrith, slowly getting taken down. Imba dies, goes out in a blaze of glory. Well played all around for Method. That is going to be an extra 5 seconds on the clock, but they got some time to spare.
Yeah, Shell's Angels was making it to the boss fight, and they were making decent time, but obviously a hurdle they couldn't get past at that point. Method tying up the series, not super surprising. Method has had a lot of success thus far on Court of Stars. That is where they pulled off the reversal against Fat Shark, yeah. So as we talked about really yesterday and today, they clearly know that dungeon very well and have a plan and executed very well. A little, I guess, cherry on top of that Court of Stars Sunday is the fact that they also have the Demon Hunter. So in a very close matchup, their opponents do not have the Demon Hunter. That helps them with the minigame. So well picked by Method and well executed.
Well, the hot fudge on that Court of Stars Sunday would probably be the mistake that comes in from Shell's Angels. I think we could have a completely different series if that doesn't happen. That was a big boo-boo at the end of the day. When we saw that team wipe come in, that ends up being 25 seconds on the clock. You have to run back because you don't have anyone to res, and it was off of an Enforcer, so that pack you had to go back to actually do it again. They were at what? I mean, the full stream BM came in a little bit early, but I think when we actually saw it, when the boss did go down, they were in the 50% area. If they didn't have that additional 25 seconds and they had that extra time,
yeah,
they ended up, they solved the mystery right quick. So honestly, the Spectral Sight, it was that cherry, but how important is the cherry to the Sunday? It's just a cherry.
Well, it's still nice to have, which is why I use
but the hot fudge is more important.
I mean, again, the cherry in this analogy is doing exactly what it needs to do, Rich.
The cherry did what it needs to do, but so did the hot fudge.
Now, girl, let's change subjects. Going into map 3 now. Again, this is going to make or break the series for both teams. Now, Shell's Angels has some options here in the pool that they've already had success on. They could go to lower Karazhan, which is, again, something they were practicing for with the Necrotic Affix. Again, that's just standard for them if they choose to go that route. They could also go Seat of the Triumvirate. That one looked a little bit messy at times, but they did technically pull out the win. So where would you like to see them go between those two maps potentially?
I think lower is going to be difficult for them because Method is actually really good on lower too, as we saw them beat 2 teams already on that lower map. Of course, it's a higher level now, so they could pull out the lower and just hope that Method is going to do some pulls that they can't do on that higher level, because of course they did it on 23 and 22. So maybe it's going to throw them off that having that lower in 24, and maybe they can't do those exact same pulls, and maybe they wipe it up or something. They can also go for Seed. Of course, Seed is the starting map for the final though, so Method might have already practiced it on 24. But we saw the teams earlier struggle as well on Seed, so if they're comfortable with it, then maybe they should pull the Seed out.
If you were to tell me one team that had practiced the finals map in this bracket out of the 8 teams, I would definitely believe it'd be Method. So certainly something to be considered. But we're going to find out on the other side of this break who is going to be joining Team PogChamp, who will be facing off against Team PogChamp. Will it be Method, or will Shell's Angels get the chance at the run back against Team PogChamp? We'll be right back.
Neue Testsieger, der CX7 von AEG.
Nun gibt es kein Gezieher, wir kämpfen jetzt und hier. Ja, denn die Ungeheuer sind wir.
neue Testsieger, der CX7 von AEG.
It's come to this. One map remains to decide who will be moving forward and who will be done in the 2018 Mythic Dungeon Invitational. Now, before the break, we kind of posited we were looking over what Kjell's Angels had success in, and we actually found out they're going with the curveball. They're going with neither map. They're going to be heading to Vault of the Wardens with the Grievous Affix. And if you're keeping track at home and you're wondering, neither of these teams this weekend has gone to Vault of the Wardens just yet. So this is truly that curveball pick. It's basically Kjell's Angels saying, well, we don't know how good they are on it. We believe we're better on it. And this is absolutely the definition of the pocket strat.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because sometimes you practice one of those dungeons and then you see the other team play it during the tournament. It's like, oh, well, we picked that dungeon and now we can't really counterpick it. Maybe they were lucky and they already practiced Vault, and now they're lucky that Method never showed it, at least on a tournament, and maybe they're not very experienced in Vault, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, certainly an interesting point. Now, talking a little bit about Method, ever since kind of taking that early dive, very beginning of the tournament, they've looked like a different team. And they're a team that plays through, there's some clever quirks to their game plans, their strategies, but overall they just mostly play solid, right? They're very consistent in terms of what they do. Kjell's Angels is kind of the opposite oddball team, right? We see these moments of brilliance from them, and then we just kind of see them mom spaghetti all over the place. They take deaths they don't need, there's full wipes they definitely don't need. Rich, what is the mentality of this team?
Well, I think that they are going about a lot of pulls in an unconventional way, and I think they take risks, and I think they should be applauded for it for the most part. I think obviously sometimes when you take a risk, it's not going to go perfectly, and I think that's why you see some of these pulls and you're like, wait, what just happened there? I think it is just attempting to find a huge amount of seconds, and it will give them a deficit sometimes. If the pool maybe worked out for them in that last one, if that wipe didn't happen, we're in a different scenario. Maybe even we see a 2-0. So I've liked what they've done so far. The main thing I'm going to be looking at with this squad is how they go about that first trash pool. That first trash pool is going to be a big moment in my mind, and then from there, I'm going to be paying, obviously, I'd like to pay attention to damage meters, but we got to be paying attention to the single target damage that they're able to get out on these boss fights. You think about having a Moonkin on so many different single target encounters. I like Moonkin a lot on Inquisitor. That's about it. I mean, besides that, you really don't have that much advantage from having it on those single target boss fights. It's going to be good in that first trash pull. They need to make up a lot of time there.
I like how every time you talk about not liking Boomkin in a particular situation, you look directly at Nagura almost apologetically. You're like, I know this means a lot to you, but I don't like...
I have before called Caroline my Boomkin idol. I've said it before. It's definitely not Super T's because he stinks, and I love you, Sid. But the PvE
tournament. There's a PvE tournament.
The main thing is I got to play Moonkin quite a bit in this expansion, and there are times when you're sad chicken. And
wait, which class is actually your main?
so I've been a Warlock main pretty much always, but I switched to Moonkin around the time of Tomb, and right now I currently identify as a Demon Hunter.
All right, well, while you in home ponder the mysteries of Rich, we're going to go ahead and hop into this third match. The players are ready to go. Vault of the Wardens. It is going to be Fortified, Volcanic, and Grievous. Which team will emerge victorious and live to fight PogChamp?
Lots of demons to hunt in this one.
Vault of the Wardens here. So we haven't seen this map today at all, as far as I'm aware. So this is the first time seeing this map, and it's also the first time seeing Kjell's Angels and Method in Vault of the Wardens.
You know, it kind of looked like you were looking at the same screen there for a second, right? We see the exact same strategy coming out. Instant bot. Tank goes in and presses that Wraith Walk, throw on the AMS on the side of Method for good measure, still inside of the bop. You know, just let's be safe here. And this is a massive pull. There's the Gorfiend's Grasp. We see the heroism on the side of Kjell's Angels. Will we see a heroism on the side of Method as well? There it is. Got to go big, got to go fast. We see the Rogue doing big damage, the Moonkin ramping up over time. Gonna blanket the silence here. How much damage will this chicken be able to do? The I-beams are going to be doing massive amounts of damage on the side of Method, just pressing that over and over and over again because of the way that the tier interacts, because of the way that your helm's going to work. That is going to be an impressive amount of damage, and ultimately, it ends up being a monk that wins that damage race.
Just this insane pull coming out of both teams here. We've seen this the first time from Skylandy in the China regionals 2 weeks ago, and now we see all the other teams doing this exact insane pull as well, with of course using the Bloodlust on both sides as well. And just look at the monk damage, just 30 million DPS coming out of the monk. Just none of the teams having troubles with it either, because it is a very difficult pull as well. If you don't coordinate your interrupts and your stuns properly, then it's very easy to lose one of the players, especially with that mini boss also doing this pulsing AoE as well. And now we can see if they choose to skip those mobs on Kjell's Angels side, or if they want to do them. And it looks like they're skipping them with that Shroud, going through and probably pulling that next pack to the boss, or they pull the patrol with the pack, as we see Method doing.
We didn't even get to talk about the mechanics because they blew up all of those mobs so quickly. The phenomenal pull coming out from the side of Kjell's Angels, and you will notice that they got a decent amount more percentage as well. So they are currently doing what they needed to do if they wanted to come out on top here. That first pull was going to be huge for them. Method still working a little bit here on these ads, and it looks like one of them... I'm trying to figure out if that one actually went into the scary bad form, but we can see that the first boss has been pulled by the Angels. They're getting some damage done here. What are the mechanics that the people at home need to be thinking about?
So this boss actually has 3 different phases that he transforms into. He's in the second phase right now, the tank phase, as you can tell. There's also 2 mobs that they pulled into the boss fight, so they're doing a little bit of a different strat than Method does. Method pulled the patrol with the trash, and now they're going to fight the boss, so they're a little bit slower, but they pull a little bit... Actually, no, they didn't pull more trash, as Kjell's Angels is on 50% and Method is on 44%. Then we can also see that he threw out his glaives in the room that just swirl around with a line connecting them. Of course, you don't want to get hit by that line, as it does a lot of damage. We can also see those Fel Furies spawning right here that cast that Scorch. They are casters and they spawn randomly in the room, so you want to stack them up on the boss as fast as possible, and you want to interrupt their cast, as it does damage if it goes through. And then of course in the last phase, as he transforms one last time, he does this I-beam that goes through the room that of course you need to dodge, else it does a lot of damage.
Yeah, and I want to touch on the fact that Kjell's Angels actually have this remarkable amount of percentage. It looked like they did the same exact pull as Method, and that's going to be the mastery that we see out of this team, Kjell's Angels. They're able to pull more trash when they have all their big damage. They have their heroism. They have everything working in their favor, and them getting those few extra... I mean, it's not even a few. They get an extra 10% here. Think about all the opportunities they really will have to skip, but they can't get hit by this there. The Rogue looked like it was going to be a little bit close. Manages to get out of that I-beam as well. Big damage going to come out here on the side of Kjell's Angels. Not only are they ahead in trash, they are also ahead on the boss. They are getting some serious work done on it, and we know that the Moonkin's going to be able to actually get those ads down quickly, but also the Rogue's going to be able to get that to get the single target damage in an effective way. On the side of Method, we have Frag, who's going to be able to just dot those up and get that little factory going, which is going to result in a lot of unstable afflictions onto his primary target. But it is Kjell's Angels on their pick that is looking strong right now.
Yeah, definitely, especially because as we talked about a lot of the times already, that if you win this first map, you just have this big advantage. Of course, Kjell's Angels lost against Method on the second map, on that Court of Stars, but they have this last map choice again. So they know the first map and they have the last map choice as well. So just such a big advantage coming in here for Kjell's Angels. And you can see it here. They're faster than Method here. Of course, they're not that far ahead, but it's 10% still for Method on that first boss, while Kjell's Angels are already fighting that Brood Meta here.
You talk about pocket strategies, and the thing is here is this really does look like one that Kjell's Angels has been able to hold. Before we jumped in, Rob was being like, well, we really haven't seen this dungeon too much. We really haven't seen these groups run this dungeon. Well, the thing is Kjell's Angels, we're starting to see how well rehearsed they are. Even just little things, when you see the healer run down an opposite lane, you see the tank run down the other lane, they converge together right on top of that foul mother and pull in that Gorfiend's grasp, get everything in there, make sure that there's no factor, no stone left unturned. And those little things are going to add up. The extra percentage they're able to milk out of that first pull. They're in such a good place right now. And Method most likely is going to have to make up that trash in the dark room when you actually go down before you get to that last boss. And that trash, it's annoying. Like, it's really annoying trash. So getting that out of the way early, already 74% for Kjell's Angels. A very big deal, a very big deal. For the most part, they're not going to have to worry about trash too much here, and already they are at Inquisitor. And I talked about how when our Moonkin's really strong, it's going to be on the Inquisitor, and this is the pull that I love to see as well. You pull the doggies, you get to dot them up. It's not a thing that you do too many times unless you really have a reason to do it, but because you have the Moonkin, because you have the Rogue, they actually get all of the dogs here. You're going to be able to see big AoE damage and also good split damage, but it looks like this Monk has just been able to Tiger's Palm everything, get everything marked up, go into that cooldown, and you can see just a whole bunch of Monk images spinning around. And when you actually get those Tiger Palms out on multiple targets, that's going to increase the amount that it does by a large amount. We know that it does a lot of AoE damage, but it also is really going to increase the single target by a little bit there. So good work by that Monk. Impressive play there. That's one of the reasons that Monks are so strong. They are very flexible in all types of damage.
Yeah, we can see it, Inquisitor here, teleporting to the first portal as he opens the door, and there's going to be some ad spawning. We see the Technician, which is actually one of the more difficult bosses to deal with. We actually see the Monk dropping really low there, so the Technician needs to be interrupted. There's some more scary mobs here from this portal. We also see the Step Soul, which is just a boss ability that makes your next ability that you use get put on a cooldown, so you need to make sure that you don't use one of your most important abilities, of course. And then we see those orbs on the side that cast this beam on players. If you don't directly look into the eye, then you will actually get disoriented, so you need to make sure to straight look into those eyes when that ability comes out. And of course we saw them pull those Scorchers and Defilers even earlier. One of the Scorchers actually explode when they die. Those dogs that we saw them pull earlier, the Defilers don't really do anything special as long as you interrupt them. But it was very smart of them to pull them because they actually give a lot of percentage. Now they're already on 83% enemy forces here.
Look into the eyes. It is a virtue and it is an important mechanic on this fight. But I have a question for you as a Moonkin. What ability do you usually use on the Sap Soul to get out of it?
It's actually very easy as a Moonkin because both your Moonfire and your Sunfire do not go on cooldown if you use them. So you can just use one of those.
All right. I was gonna say that, but it looks like you know it as well. Yeah, there are so many different abilities. You really do need to be in a mindset, though. Every single class is gonna have something that they can use that is very easy to use, and the important thing to note is you kind of need to reflexively be able to respond to it, because if you mess up on one global, you can really mess up your damage here. And we can see on all sides right now, nobody is messing up. Definitely pumping on Method as well. The amount of damage that they are able to get out here. You can see the Warlock. It's no surprise that the Warlock's going to be able to do good damage on this fight. You can spread those dots, but those little things that have happened on the side of Kjell's Angels, really the story of this right now is they're better at pulling trash. They've just been better at pulling trash so far. No one really messing up on the bosses. And kind of talked about before we got into the dungeon, okay, look, the Moonkin and on so many single target encounters, like, is it going to be that good? But at the end of the day, it's a fortified dungeon and they're pulling trash really well. So the Moonkin's not going to be a deficit. They're turning it into a weapon, and it is really, really cutting down the time for them. As you can see, production just making Method's screen a little bit smaller. Let's see if they can convince us to make that the same size as Kjell's Angel screen, or if it will disappear into the Twisting Nether as Kjell's Angels pull some of the last trash that they'll need to pull in this dungeon.
And Divine Field unfortunately falling down the steps there, but it only cost him 1 or 2 seconds to get back up with his Wraith Walk. They're pulling the minibus here. They actually actually pulled some extra dogs as well. So I believe they're using this new strategy we saw coming out of a team earlier that played Vault earlier in the tournament, where they were on 100% or almost 100% already. I believe it was 97, where they actually managed to skip the last mini-boss, the 4 spiders, and pretty much everything else except the last beard before the boss, which is, of course, they can do because they do have this rogue, and it's this new strat that, of course, we streamed it and it wasn't a tournament, so it's nice to see that people are adapting to it, and we're probably going to see come out from this group later on.
It's a little tricky to execute perfectly, right? I think that is one thing to note about that strat. I'm pretty much sold on it, but seeing another team try to execute it will be really exciting. So you can see 99% mark, and that's why they go for that pull. Once we get down, after we got 2 more bosses to go through, then we're going to go down into that dark room where you have your nightlight and you're shining in on things and you're beating them up, and we'll see how they actually do decide to do it. But most likely they're going to get to deal with that last one while they deal with the RP. So well played by them. Now big damage going out onto Glazer, and as you can see, they're going to be these little balls of death floating around. You don't want to hit them, but you want to stay close to the boss, so he takes just a little bit of damage from that ability, and you can see them kind of flying into the boss's area right now, but Tank getting yo-yoed upon for just a little bit here, able to get healed up here by Karazhan. Did I say that right?
I'm not sure.
Karazhan. I've been scared to say that name. I don't know why I got the strength there, but now you can see Glazer going to go inside this little immunity here. It looks like Aspect of the Turtle. You got to beat up that mirror like you do every morning when you have a bad hair day, and then when the laser actually goes and hits that, you get everything lined up. You're going to break him out of the immunity and then do some massive damage.
Yeah, the boss actually gains a DPS damage increase on him for a couple of seconds. It's a pretty short amount of time, shorter than on Ash Golem later on. But you can see, of course, the Windwalker and the Rogue just doing crazy amounts of damage here. It is 45, so of course the bosses don't have that tyrannical buff, but it is a 24 dungeon, so of course just from the level, the bosses do have quite a bit of HP. But we can see the boss just melt by this buff. The boss on 30%, they might be able to do it before the second focus phase, most likely, and then they can go to Ash Golem. And we see Method here on Laser now as well.
And pretty much at this point, Kjell's Angel has a complete boss between them and Method. I would say in the trash department, it's something closer to like 7%, even though it's 99% to 90%, just because they're going to have to go over just a small amount. That was a very efficient pull that they did. This is one of those scenarios where doing 104% ends up being the same as doing 100%, just because of how you actually pull on that big demon.
So they actually did not use their Bloodlust here. Interesting to note by Kjell's Angels. Method is using their Bloodlust here for Glacier, but as you can see, they one-phase Glacier without using that Bloodlust. So they probably knew that they don't need that Bloodlust to one-phase it, which, of course, if you get an extra focus phase, then you lose a lot of time. But if you one-phase it anyway, no matter if you use your Bloodlust or not, then it would be much better to save it for Ash Golem. So they go to Ash Golem straight away with their Bloodlust ready still. Method did use it, so they're going to be a little bit of a disadvantage here because they don't have their Bloodlust anymore.
Yeah, I think the thing with Ash Golem here is they may be able to just take him down in the freeze. We'll have to see, because we know that monks are incredibly good at doing damage in that burst window. It's one of the classes that is very strong at doing that. So there it is. Instantly, they are going to pop that Lust, and here it comes. Ash Golem going to get frozen. He's going to take big amounts of damage, and just expect to see him get shattered to oblivion here. They're going to try to send him back to the Shadow Realm before he even gets out of his Tomb of Ice. Method going to be running over right now. They are engaging the boss. How much will this off-tempo heroism really do for them? It's a very different timing that we don't traditionally see, and you can see Ash Golem already hitting that 50% mark.
Yeah, already down to 50% from just one brittle. The Bloodlust is still up, as you can see. So there's some difficult mechanics on this boss fight going on. As you can see, those lava pools coming out on the floor. There's some embers spawning now in terms of elementals. If they do get hit by one of those lava pools on the floor, then they actually do detonate and explode on the whole group. So we can see sometimes people with immunities just walking through those pools, soaking them up. You can see the DK doing a Divine Field. Wraith walked, soaking up those fields with his defensive, with his AMS, not getting any of those stacks. And of course, we see the stun coming out, the brittle as well. That will be available again in 1 minute, as I believe, but they should be able to kill the boss before the second stun actually comes out even.
I think they're probably going to get it down, I agree with you, before they actually do get him inside of that ice cube again. The question is, will Method, right? It's one of those same things where, yes, okay, so the second one does come out, but Method ultimately doesn't have the heroism on this boss. They're keeping it relatively close, but we will see when Kjell's Angels finishes off this boss, how well they're going to be able to execute this pull that's a little bit newer to the MDI. We haven't seen it executed that many times. Let's see how cleanly they can do it, because if they mess up here, all of a sudden they lose their lead. Because Method is, they've started to really find gas here in the last leg of this tournament. This is going to be the dungeon that decides it too. After this, we will know who is going to the global finals for the Europe region. We already got PogChamp waiting in the grand finals. Which of these teams is going to face off against him? It will be decided in just a few short moments here.
You can see Kjell's Angels popping that Invis potion just to go past those two mini bosses. Of course, if you don't use the Invis potion here, you need to go all around back to the Glacier room and go through where you killed the mini boss. Else, of course, you can't dodge that other mini boss that is standing in front of the door. So really smart to use that Invis potion here. And now we're probably gonna see the Shroud coming out of the rogue, and with those 4 spiders, I'm not exactly sure what they're gonna do. I think someone might just pull them to the side and vanish then afterwards, and then use that Shroud to dodge the rest of the trash. And then the only thing that's gonna be left between them and the last boss is that spirit that he needs to kill to open the door, and the Broodmother. So they're gonna use that avalanche potion here. Of course, if you use avalanche potion, then you won't get any falling damage. So you can see the Invis Shroud coming out, and if you get damage, you actually get out of stealth. So they use another avalanche potion because it actually does not trigger the cooldown, the potion cooldown that usually triggers if you use any sort of potions. But Avalanche Potion does not trigger that cooldown, and they can use it twice in a row and go through with that Shroud. So they actually managed to get the Shroud all the way. They didn't need to pull those 4 spiders. They just shrouded and went all the way through.
That was so clean. Just down to the little details. We actually saw the Druid was, I believe it was the Druid, was the one to grab the light initially. The light gets dropped and the tank grabs it and goes in with the Wraith Walk. That seems like such a small detail, but it's actually huge because it just gets you engaged that much faster on the ads. We can tell that they've practiced it here. They're going to be able to Zerg ahead as well, start to get that RP going as they deal with this Broodmother, which has a huge health pool. It really does have a huge health pool, and on top of that, they don't need it for trash percentage. But the thing is one of the reasons that this pull is so efficient is because it doesn't really matter that you're working on the Broodmother, because at the end of the day, this RP takes an astronomical amount of time, but very well done by them. They're making sure that they don't get anything fluky happening with the Broodmother as well. You don't want it resetting or anything like that. And now they're able to get to the boss. And look, Method still hasn't completed their trash percentage. They're at the 97% mark now, so they pretty much just need to get to that final Gatekeeper. But on a fortified setting, this is Kjell's Angels to throw right now as they engage our Cordana Felsong.
Yeah, Method is actually doing the same exact skip. They need to summon though, because Imba didn't manage. Maybe his potion wasn't cool and he didn't manage to get the Invis out, so they do need to summon Imba here, costing them a couple of seconds. Of course, both teams actually played really cleanly so far. The only death in both of the teams is Imba from right now, where they had to summon him because probably his potion was on cooldown. But both teams very cleanly. It's just Kjell's Angels probably just a little bit more experienced in his dungeons. Everything, like every pull down to the T, like everything was perfect by them. Pretty much perfect percentage coming out, perfect skip, and just flawless strat coming out of Kjell's Angels.
When you're in a situation like that, all you can say is push 1 for summon and push F to pay your respects as the full screen BM comes in. Cordana Felsong about to hit that 50% mark, and now all you got to do is walk around the walls. It's not going to be too difficult to do. As you can see, very good management on the bad zones on the ground. Just grab the light, stand in them, they'll go away. We'll send them back to the Shadow Realm from whence they came. But this is looking like it's going to be Kjell's Angels series, which means we will see Kjell's Angels and PogChamp go to the global finals. One of the best teams in the world, 2 of the best teams that we really expected to go, are most likely being sent home here. This is a crazy result coming out of Europe, and we are really seeing that some of the best teams in the world are located in this region. They are going to be sending very worthy champions on to fight to represent them globally in the first Mythic Dungeon Invitational land. And on top of that, we're going to have a hell of a grand final series.
I'm just very impressed by both Kjell's Angels and PogChamp. Kjell's Angels, it's actually going to be a rematch as they already played each other, Kjell's Angels and PogChamp. It was a very close match as well, so we're going to see the same rematch in the finals coming out on those 24 dungeons most likely. Unless Kjell's Angels, of course, wipes up here. We can see the intermission phase going on right now, and Cordana jumped down as the intermission phase is over. Now you have to put that light into the top left corner to reveal that at. If you stun the at, as you can see coming out of the Paladin, then the shield gets removed from Cardana, and you don't have to do much anymore other than just nuke the boss and be happy that you're going to the land.
That was like destiny too. Even when we just see the wall coming down, it's like, okay, can you handle this? Just stand in one place. It was like the best RNG he could possibly have on the wall, and just like that, Cordana Fell Song. I got one thing to say, Rob, show me the loot.
No. I will show you an apology, however. I did want to point out, I thought this was the first time they were running Vault of the Wardens over the course of this tournament. They were the team we actually saw fittingly pull out the strat against Radar.io. So the reason it